Welcome to this week's edition of Freedom and Prosperity Radio, the weekly radio news magazine that we put together here at the Virginia Institute for Public Policy. My name is Joe Thomas, and welcome back onto the program this week. Before I tell you that you can find archives of previous programs at YouTube and then search Freedom and Prosperity Radio. You'll find several visits with Todd Gathje. Is the Director of Government Relations at the Family Foundation. Todd, welcome back to the show. How are you doing, sir?
Thank you for having me back. Yes, we're doing good. We're getting close to the end of the summer here.
Yes, and boy, the zeal for spending other people's money, even money that other people didn't have to contribute to the government, they just printed it, seemed to be on full display during the special session of the Virginia General Assembly. Everyone walking away, it was almost like one of those carnival games where everyone gets a little stuffed animal. Everyone's walking around. I got $5 million funding for anti-gun programs. I got this funding. I say, holy cow. And I just watched the parliamentary procedure of just dismissing every conservative, even borderline conservative. If it touched the hands of a Republican, it would just get dismissed out of hat. Yeah.
I wonder if people were feeling relieved after spending all this federal relief money.
Yeah.
You're right. Your description is spot on. Typically, we're really relieved when they want to try and get in and get out of Richmond as quickly as possible. But as you alluded to, they came in with an agenda, and there was little to zero debate on any of the aspects of this federal spending package that they get to upwards of $3.3 billion in federal funds that they get to spend on all of their pet projects.
It's sad because I really find myself feeling hollow when I say it's really important to look at the elected officials we're voting for, but this was a great example of what happens when you take your eye off of a particular election ball, because this was a great example of people who not only were not defending our rights, but were out there saying, oh no, we got money to make it seem like we're giving people rights, even if it's just money for their rights.
That's a great point. Yeah, this is what happens when you have essentially one-party rule in Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important for your listeners to understand that what the process is. Really starts out with the governor. He submits some type of proposal to the General Assembly, and then it's the responsibility of the General Assembly to consider those provisions, consider those spending packages, and then have thoughtful debate and rigorous debate over this. And that's in the form of committees, in the form of conference committee meetings, floor debates, and essentially what the deal was is the governor was going to submit his budget proposal, and they were just going to rubber stamp everything that he had in there, the billions of dollars. And the House, for the most part, stuck to the script. They shot down efforts by Republicans to try and get in some meaningful amendments. The Senate at least did have some debates.
Mm-hmm.
They put forward about 59 different amendments, ranging from spending to also language trying to prohibit the inclusion of elements of critical race theory in our education system, as well as trying to prevent these model transgender policies from being mandated on
mm-hmm.
local school divisions. So they did their part. At the end of the day, though, all of these efforts really were defeated by the majority in the General Assembly.
And so hopefully now with competitive races in every one of these, and reminder, early voting begins in September, I think 17th. So, don't wait on it. Don't all of a sudden, realize it's election day and you haven't gotten out there to vote. You can get there early and then maybe even volunteer to help as an election official. Watching over the counting of the ballots, certainly something we've seen is needed. Todd Gathje, Director of Government Relations. So that being said, what hope do you have? What are some of the first things that need to be driven back? Because we've seen some strange fissures in the facade, especially as it comes down to some of the mask mandates and some of the things that are and aren't required in the schools. We have the court case out of Lynchburg that says it's the Department of Education's guidance is just guidance. You can vote to do what you see fit, but you have school board members who insist we're doing what the governor told us to do, and as if they're just minions. Where are we sitting today?
I think that a lot of the unrest with parents and citizens at the local school division, at the local level, is really highlighting the fact that there's a great mobilization, in my opinion, at the local level and in the grassroots, of people who are frustrated with government and how there is so much intrusion on our lives and the violation of our rights and the ability to live out our lives in accordance with our personal beliefs, our personal convictions. So I think you're seeing a groundswell, the beginning of a movement. Now, how that plays out in terms of elections, that depends. That depends on whether or not people want to get registered, if they want to make sure they go and vote for the right issues, pro-life, standing up for the sanctity of life. If you were frustrated with a governor that said openly about a baby that was surviving in a failed abortion, in which he said, we're going to lay the baby on the table and let the parents and the doctors decide if the baby lives or dies. If that's okay with you, or if you're disgusted with that, then that should give you motivation to go to the polls. Or if you're looking at these model transgender policies and you're seeing that, hey, these can have some really detrimental effects on my life, the ability to raise my kids, even to the extent of leading to disciplinary action for teachers who fail to follow these mandates by the state. If you are frustrated with that, then this should give you motivation to go to the polls and to exercise your civic duty to vote. And so I think this is by far, we say it every year, right? This is the most critical election coming up that we've had in however many years. But I would be remiss to say this is probably one of the most important elections we've faced in quite a while, because not only you're looking at the statewide offices, but you're also looking at a House that's up for grabs. And it's, according to some polls, they're suggesting this is doable, that Republicans could get back some seats. We'll see. But the important thing is that we get elected officials in office who are going to uphold those core values that we hold dear: religious liberty, parental rights, the sanctity of life. If you value marriage, you're going to want to be paying attention to the House of Delegates, because they have the ability to decide whether or not we're going to move forward with a amendment that not only repeals the constitutional amendment currently in place that says that marriage is between one man and one woman, and replace it with language that says that it could be up to any number of marriage arrangements. If you're concerned about that, the House of Delegates could go a long ways in deciding whether or not something like that ends up on the ballot in a future election. So a lot is on the line, and we're seeing, as we go to various local school boards meetings, we're seeing more and more people completely frustrated with the fact that government is not listening to them. They're making decisions, and they're just feeling left out of the conversation. We saw it in Loudoun when they shut down debate a couple months ago. We're seeing it in some other localities where they're just not having any public debate. Decisions are being made behind the scenes. This whole budget process here in Richmond is another great example. We've spent billions of dollars, and some of it maybe is worthwhile, but you have billions of dollars on broadband. You can discuss the proper role of government in that and whether or not they should be engaging in that, but you have billions of dollars in broadband, some unemployment trust fund. You have billions of dollars going, millions of dollars going towards public safety. After months of putting down the public safety and police, now all of a sudden we're now trying to give back to them, which is great. They deserve it. They're on the front lines. What about spending for HVAC and better air quality in schools? That's great. Well, now, according to this budget, they have to provide a 100% match at the local level. But all of this was done behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's essentially rubber stamping what the governor wants and what the majority and the General Assembly want, with little to no representation and debate over these issues. It's all part of a theme that we're seeing, whether it's in Richmond or if it's at the local levels, where the public and their ability to have any comment and any say in what elected officials are doing is more and more becoming marginalized.
When you look at the way this has been played out, Todd, and you talk about these things that are done in committees and subcommittees of those committees, and it's markup, and then the governor just signs it, and the citizen says, "Hold it, what happened?" I mean, It's everything Ken Cuccinelli warned us about when he said if Terry McAuliffe takes over the Virginia government, it's going to be D.C. politics, not the Virginia way anymore. And that's what I feel like a lot of the grassroots activists are feeling is that, we speak at the meetings and we get dismissed. We watched it in Greene County, Virginia, where the chair of the board just walked away and then claimed later that, she adjourned the meeting and it was over. And nobody has any proof of that, but she just walked away and said, I adjourned the meeting. That's a pretty powerful position if she has it. Yeah. Or these committees that in the General Assembly that are 9-3, to the majority party, which isn't even close to representative to how the House is split so close to evenly.
Yeah, and that's a great point. If we could expect, if there's no changes, if everything remains the same and we have the same one-party rule, we can expect the same outcomes and the same procedures and the same processes, being used and the same tactics being used going forward. I mean, we're talking about the budget. We didn't even talk about we haven't gotten to the to the court appointees, to the Court of Appeals.
Yeah.
The judges, they recess. They go behind apparently closed doors, nominate those judges who they're going to appoint to these Court of Appeals, and there's virtually no debate, no discussion over them, no consideration of other candidates. And they come back and say, yes, well, you can throw someone else's name in the ring to have to be considered or ask them difficult questions, but there's no robust debate. And yes, you can, we would all say, hey, let's get them in and out of Richmond as quickly as possible so they do the less amount of damage, but let's not do it at the risk of failing to follow through with open and transparent meetings and discussions so that the people, the public, can know what is happening in Richmond.
Todd Gathje is on with us from the Family Foundation. He's their Director of Government Relations. I think it's important because people hear us talking, Todd, and go, oh, you're just nattering nabobs. It's just like, you and I and everyone at the Family Foundation, Victoria, on through the whole organization, we're not doing this just because we want to say no, because we like the sound of our voice saying no. These are agendas that have been proven just completely disastrous. We just saw the story out of Oregon that apparently, without even announcing it to the public, the governor signed a Senate bill that removed the requirements to prove that you could do math, English, or both reading and writing and mathematics in order to graduate high school in Oregon, and never held a press conference. Can you imagine a politician doing something and not holding a press conference for it? It's got to be really bad to do it. But these are policies and the transgender policies that are just teaching kids to either be bullies or to be go-alongers to get popularity. These are things that have proven to be bad over time. We're not sitting here just saying no because we want to be mean.
Yeah, That's a great point. Yeah, I don't know of any legislator who's really avoided the opportunity to get behind a podium and have a press conference over something they really believe in. And in fact, that's we did see that after they passed this spending package here in Richmond. All of the legislators would go out there and see what I've done for you. I got this in there. I voted for this, and but in this package, there's nothing really that impacts the individual. There was no tax breaks. Mm-hmm. Did we give any money back to the individual who we could help them out with, putting food on the table, mm-hmm. Maybe covering mortgage or other types of expenses?
No.
We've seen it come from the federal government, but nothing in the form of tax breaks here in Virginia. Mm-hmm. It all went to different spending interests. And that should be concerning to so many, that there's a focus on trying to appeal to their personal interests, but the public, the people of Virginia, were left completely out of this budget process. You could say that some are impacted by some of the spending package, preferences, on broadband and certainly the unemployment trust fund and replenishing that, but I think the individuals, too, deserved some money back. It is taxpayer-funded money, even if it's not technically all Virginians. We know that it's coming from somewhere, but certainly some of that could have gone back in the form of tax breaks or refunds to the individuals, to the citizens of Virginia.
So talk about this, and we had this debate before the session went in with several of the delegates regarding legacy programs versus, one-time offsets to help, rebuild something or to replenish something. How much of this stuff is creating a spending plan that's going to require, once this money is gone, the Commonwealth to come up with more money in their budgets in years to come?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're going to have to monitor that and see. I think one thing that we should all be concerned about, kind of in that same vein, is that the governor's going to be back in a couple of weeks because he's going to have to start explaining how they're spending this $2.6 billion in surplus that they've all of a sudden received. That's in the midst of this pandemic that Virginia has seemingly has been able to stay above water. And so I think that there's a good reason to be looking closely at how this governor spends the money going forward. I mean, don't forget this spending package also left out $800 million for, quote, pandemic-related costs. So, and that begs the question, what are they anticipating? What kind of other pandemic-related costs could they not address with $3.3 billion? So, are we anticipating more lockdowns, more restrictions that could harm businesses and individuals? Is that why we're reserving this? What about this additional $2.6 billion in surplus funds? Is that going to trickle down to the individual? Is there going to be tax breaks? Because we have all of this cash coming in, and it's left for the majority of the General Assembly and the governor to be able to spend as they desire. Again, pointing to the fact that elections have consequences. Mm-hmm. And so come starting September 17th, we have an opportunity to change the trajectory of Virginia, restoring those fundamental principles of limited government, of being good stewards with taxpayer funds, of only spending taxes on those constitutionally and statutorily approved spending purposes. Mm-hmm. That's what's going to make a difference.
When you look at the movement, and you mentioned that you're working with a lot of local grassroots organizations regarding both critical race theory in the schools, coloring and talking to whistleblowing teachers. As a matter of fact, you just had a primer, a webinar on for teachers and parents and how to handle critical race theory, and it's reminiscent in a way of 2010 with the Tea Party movement, and I know you look much younger than me, but you were there. You were around, during the Tea Party years. I feel like the Tea Party movement kind of blasted everybody out, changed the course of Virginia and federal policy, and then the members said, "Okay, our work here is done," and went back to what they normally did. Whereas the left, the statists, They are grinders. If they don't win an election, they just come back next year in the same position. They're like, all right, I'm going to come back. Can we sustain this inertia, Todd, this time around?
I wouldn't be surprised if this movement really takes hold. I think it's important to make this distinction that what's happening in Richmond is really from the leaders, the majority, and the leaders of the majority that's there in the House and the Senate. You know, there are some that are going to be kind of rank and file who are thinking, wait a minute, this is really going to harm me in the long run. And I get the sense that they may have really overreached when it comes to these lockdowns, when it comes to mask mandates, when it comes to these model policies for the transgender students that essentially that violate constitutional rights. We want to make sure that, of course, as we've talked about before, protect every student, not just a few. And so what we're seeing now is a groundswell of support rising up, and I don't think that liberals really anticipated and progressives really anticipated that this reaction would happen. I think that there was a thought that it'll just be adopted and they'll accept all of these things and move on, and that's not the case. And we've seen it with the start of, for example, with the model policies in Russell County. Mm-hmm. They were the first ones to openly reject, and it has been a domino effect. We are starting to see more and more localities, school divisions, stand up and say, no, we're not passing these VDOE policies. We're not going to accept the Virginia School Board Association's suggested policy change, which actually conforms to the model policies. We're not doing that. We're seeing statements, public statements being made saying we're fine. We don't need this additional help or these additional guidance. And all of a sudden the narrative is starting to kind of crumble that localities and school divisions are just going to kneel down and accept what the leaders in Richmond have decided and go along with it. And I would say that this is going to have an impact come election time. I can't predict the future. I can't predict the outcomes, but you will see an impact.
Thank you so much, Todd Gathje from the Family Foundation. It's familyfoundation.org. You have a wonderful weekend, sir.
Thank you so much. You do the same.
Up next, Adam Brandon, president of FreedomWorks and author of A Republic, Not a Democracy, How to Restore Sanity in America, next on Freedom and Prosperity Radio.